Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so very much for joining us tonight on our fourth installment of the Mercer University Alumni Bear Series. Tonight, we have with us Dr. Quentin Stubbs. Dr. Quentin Stubbs is a regional navigation manager in Texas and an adjunct professor. As a student at Mercer University, Dr. Stubbs was actively engaged in the organization of Black students, known as OBS, the Mercer Singers, Delta Sigma Pi, and students interested in free enterprise and all of God's anointed people evangelizing, also known as agape. He holds a PhD in geographical sciences from the University of Maryland, College Park, a MPA from Columbia University. He also earned a BBA from Mercer University with a major in international business and a minor in Spanish, which included studying abroad in Seville, Spain. Quentin recently became the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's NOAA Regional Navigation Manager for Texas. His primary responsibilities are to help identify navigational challenges for facing the marine transportation system and provide the resources and services that promote safe and efficient navigation. He helps to provide expert navigation preparation and response information for severe weather or hurricane preparedness and post storm response. He also serves as an adjunct professor for the University of Houston, Clear Lake, and Houston Community College. He's a frequent speaker on human and physical geography, natural hazards, navigation, and safety. He also serves as the geographic and regulatory specialist with the Army Corps of Engineers in Galveston, Texas, where he managed to permit applications and projects related to dredging, aquatic structures, hydrographic surveying, and GIS remote sensing. He also has 6 years of experience as a geographer with the U.S. Geological Survey, Chesapeake Bay Program, Annapolis, Maryland, in which he assisted in the creation of regional and land use data set for the Chesapeake Bay watershed. His career has thrived on maximizing opportunities like serving as Congressional Fellow to Congressman James Clyburn's South Carolina office through the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. As a founding fellow with the William Anderson Fund and the National Association of Black Geoscientists and the officer in the U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary. He enjoys helping minority students develop a passion and understanding of natural hazards, environmental policy, emergency management, and GIS tools. Thank you so very much, Dr. Quentin Stubbs, for joining us. As always, you are an excellent example of what it means to be the bear. I'm now going to turn it over to you for you to share your story. Thank you so very much for everyone for joining us.
Thank you, Dr. Brooker. I would like to thank you and Mercer for this opportunity. I will go ahead and get started. I'll share my screen. All right, and today I'll be talking about what is your story map. I'll start off with an overview of basically my career path in education, background and goals, education, talk a little bit about my life at Mercer, my experiences at Mercer, as well as through graduate school and into my current career. I'll talk about some of the challenges that you may face, that I faced as well, and tools to help you overcome them. And in the end, I'll give a brief and synopsis again. What exactly do I do? This story map that I'm talking about, again, is looking at careers in STEM. And as you see to the right, little graphic, I focus typically on geography or geographical sciences. So when I look at background and goals, I think about the people that have helped along the way. In the top left-hand corner, my late grandfather holding me when I was quite little serves as motivation when thinking about what people have gone through in the past and what we feel obliged to do today to help people. To the bottom left, two of my brothers. My father is from the Bahamas. They reside in the Bahamas. Always motivational to look at their accomplishments and to follow in their footsteps. The top right-hand corner gives a little view of what did I want to do when I grow up. I always wanted to be a baseball player. I think that was one of my major career goals, is saying, what do I want to be? I want to play baseball. And I was determined. I left off, again, talking about my early career goals, wanting to be an athlete, a baseball player. The bottom right-hand corner shows that sometimes God will throw wrenches into your life. I had brain surgery when I was 12 from the neurosurgeon, Ben Carson. And luckily, it was a blessing that it was successful. But it altered my interest from sports into the business world. So after the surgery, going through high school, I asked myself, what do I need to know to become a professional? This is kind of a diagram illustrating my education. So as you see, as an undergraduate, I started off in business in Spanish, wanting to do international business, international commerce. It evolved a little farther, looking at environmental science and policy because I was interested in land use, and then ending up almost back full circle in a STEM program, again in the whole science realm of GIS and remote sensing. When I was looking at business, I was really fascinated with economic development. Being located in the Macon area and being from the suburbs of Atlanta, residential development was huge. And you began to wonder about sustainable development. How long can this development last? How is this impacting the environment? Where are all these people coming from? Can this community, does it have a capacity? All these questions began to pop up. Wasn't until really moving to New York, as well as living in Washington, D.C., discovering the concept of gentrification, looking at environmental justice, all those issues. So the key tools I learned when looking in the business realm, again, my educational background, analytic skills, statistics, communication in foreign language, all of those I learned are vital if you're exploring business. While at Mercer, as Dr. Booker mentioned, some of the activities that kind of kept my head on right and really enjoyed were, again, Agape, as you see the logo, to the left, Delta Sigma Pi, in the middle, Mercer Singers. Really, Mercer Singers really stood out because of just feeling like the family, the belonging, the skills that are learning as far as communication, just the arts. I mean, I strongly recommend if you can explore some type of arts. I mean, it can be visual arts, vocal, while in school. I mean, was a very powerful method of stress relief, wanting to be in international business. The concept of learning about other cultures when learning about music was, I mean, it really propelled me through school. As you can see on the bottom left corner, that was the Agape Step Team. Unfortunately, I didn't get to be a part of it, but it really helped me to understand how much I like to teach, how much I like to mentor, and really give back, and seeing the product of what you do. The picture on the bottom, in the middle, was when I went to study abroad to Seville. The picture is actually from a city called Lagos in Portugal. That was a life-changing experience. As you can see, it's a very beautiful beach, a very beautiful area. It's almost basically on the corner of the Atlantic and the Mediterranean. But it was also very humbling because as you see to the left, originally I thought it was a fort. And I was just really fascinated. Oh, look at this historical structure. But what it really became, what it really was a slave port where they exported slaves to the US. Seeing that just really blew my mind away when looking at history on an international level. And the bottom right-hand corner, as I talk about a little bit later, when thinking about networking and being bold and taking risks, this was at an event, a Mercer kind of alumni economic development event, which at first I wasn't going to go to because I didn't know anybody there. But having been part of Delta Sigma Pi kind of motivated me to go. And sure enough, met some pretty powerful people there who are quite encouraging and motivational. I'm sure you know, if you've gone to Mercer, the two people on the ends. On the right-hand side, the previous president, Godsey, and on the left, I believe his name was, he was the athletic director at Mercer. So graduation, when I finished Mercer, I was so excited. I was so motivated until I asked myself, well, now what do I do? Now what do I want to do? Because um, it was really at the almost the last minute. I didn't really get a job until actually almost the last day of school. Seeing people get jobs and being placed during their senior year, sometimes in their junior year, guaranteed job when they leave. That didn't really happen on my end until the very end. And I began to ask myself, do I want to be an accountant? No. A financial analyst? No. Marketing? Maybe. Economics? I remember taking Dr. Andrews or Dr. Mounts. Macro, maybe, but micro, no way do I want to be a microeconomist. And then information management at the time I thought was too boring and said no. Um, so the opportunities were not really there until the career development department at Mercer was very, very helpful, especially for minorities. And I stumbled across a posting. It was called Technicon for business development, which is actually marketing, which I was emphatic. I was, really excited to be placed in a job. And little did I know that it would expose me to Department of Defense, urban planning, public policy. It was really a good starter job. But I began to ask myself, what is my recipe? What do I want to do in life? And I began to think about it and just kind of poured all of these disciplines and interests into one bucket, um, and discovering I wanted to be in something related to STEM. Um, the pictures really represent my interests in graduate studies. The top picture is in Blackwater National Refuge in Maryland. It's looking at wetlands. Um, Became very interested in wetlands and their influence on flood management and climate change. The middle graphic is looking at land use. How do people classify how buildings and land is used? That just really fascinated me with GIS and remote sensing. And then the bottom, again, reiterating wetlands. But the question is, what is my recipe? What are my interests? If I could put everything together, what would come out? So after, I had to make an adjustment. Okay, I have a business degree, but I really want to look at how the environment is managed. So I need to explore policy in issues like climate change, environmental justice, energy, and then appropriations. Basically appropriations, it's talking about the power of money. I had a wonderful experience in the Congressional Caucus, Black Caucus Foundation, in Congressman Clyburn's office. He's from South Carolina. And it was just eye-opening to be able to meet congressional members, more so the staffers, um, the chiefs of staff, the analysts. I mean, I can't remember day after day, I would be doing something, and sure enough, John Lewis, the late John Lewis, would walk across. I'd meet Congressman Cleaver or Sheila Jackson Lee. I mean, just wonderful experience on Capitol Hill. Just me, again, as I said, meeting, communicating with constituents, learning how to represent someone or a group of people and communicate with them. Educational, attending hearings and sessions. I tried to cater toward environment and science, assisting with policy writing, and then research. The congressional fellows, we each had different, it was about 7 of us. We each had different interests. So some focused on policy writing, some focused on PR, some focused as in public relations, some focused on, things like public health and outreach to community members. Research is what stuck out to me. So again, all of these things, are piling on. You'll learn in a STEM career, you're constantly adding new skills. And while there, I'm on the Hill, I was fascinated with climate change, but again, to learn in all this research, the importance of understanding the science. People are writing bills, people are writing policies, And you have to ask yourself, what are they basing it on? As we discovered in the last administration, it's a debate on what do you base your decisions on. And I felt I needed to really dive deeper into physical science, kind of the hardcore science. That's where I discovered wetlands, because it's a mixture. You're dealing with water, you're dealing with land, you're dealing with weather and hurricanes, you're dealing with chemistry, you're dealing with all of those things. It's also where I learned the key tools. If you're an undergrad, even if you're in graduate school, GIS to me is almost like the need to know and understand GIS is almost like needing to know how to use Microsoft Word. It's you have to know GIS or some dimension of it in a way of expressing, facts via maps or statistics. However you do it, it's a very powerful tool to get the message across. Programming, I strongly encourage people to learn a programming language, though it may be challenging. Long-term benefits, especially when you're trying to be interdisciplinary. You're applying for a job. You may not be able to do exactly what you want to do, but if you have skills, again, with software and programming, those things are very attractive and beneficial. And then finally, technical communication. As I'll mention later on, what language do you speak? Technical communication is very important because you're talking to a specific audience. You may be talking to scientists 1 minute, and you could have 50-page document that's all about numbers and equations, but then you need to tell a congressman something, and they need to know in 2 sentences what that 50-page document is about. And then you have community members where you may have to talk in a totally, completely different language. You're not using scientific terms. You have to use it in everyday life. So as I mentioned, I had to ask myself, okay, let me back up. As in one of the illustrations I showed when I was flying in a plane, you have to back up and say, okay, what languages do I speak? So some of the issues that I was passionate about and learned about, again, environmental justice, land use, land cover change, and natural hazards like hurricanes. Okay, those are kind of the core issues. Then I say, okay, I learned, I've obtained knowledge and skill sets with these tools in GIS and statistics and programming. What does all that mean? Like, if I want a career, what does that translate into? So the careers that I looked at were policy analyst and physical scientist. I was a little bit challenged because I didn't just want to be a policy analyst. I wanted to be able to go out in the wetland, go out in the water, take water samples or soil samples. But I didn't want to be a physical scientist writing 50-page documents and doing PowerPoint presentations all the time. I wanted to merge it together. Where can I be an extrovert and interact with people and a scientist at the same time? And boom, that's where the geography or geographer discipline came into play. The point of this illustration is looking at my career path. It's not necessarily going to be a straight line. As if you wanted to be an attorney, or if someone wanted to be a doctor, maybe somewhat more of a straight line. You start at point A and you end at point Z. My career path was all over the place. As you see, I started off where it says post-undergrad, Clark next, and that was Technicon. Okay, business development. Then I need to go to grad school. Okay, I need some more knowledge. Going to Columbia, Congressional Black Caucus. Okay, now what? That's when I ended up looking at it, urban planning. Because again, I was trying to find disciplines that looked at environmental management, that involved people, that involved economic development. Well, I worked for an architecture engineering firm called AECOM. And one of the most fascinating projects I got to participate in was do an environmental impact study of the DC baseball stadium, and where the Nationals play baseball. So being able to do projects like that was very eye-opening. Then moved on to what's called Social Compact. This was a nonprofit that looked at population growth, which was a link to future endeavors with the Census Bureau, looking at the Earth Conservation Corps. This is where kind of a conversion between social science and physical science. Earth Conservation Corps, the goal was basically to teach minority or disadvantaged populations about how to manage the environment, more specifically those who live in southeastern Washington, D.C. While there, that's where I really began to have a passion, again, from the Census Bureau and looking at cartography and maps to science to wetlands. That's when I needed a PhD. I discovered I have to have a PhD to be an effective scientist in this discipline. At the same time, that's where I worked at USGS in the US Pathways program as a geographer. After completing my PhD, my family and I, we moved here to Houston to work. I worked for the Army Corps of Engineers. We moved here 2 weeks after Hurricane Harvey, which was an eye-opening experience. And then after working there almost 3 years, I arrived at NOAA as a regional navigation manager. So the summary of this illustration, your career path is not always a straight line. It may have to bend and make some turns to get where you want to go. So now I'm kind of shifting into just more career tips and advice when pursuing a career, either in GIS or STEM in general. When you start off, if you're an undergrad right now, ask yourself, what are your goals? If you haven't picked out a major yet, again, go back to asking yourself, what's your recipe? What do you want to do? And even if you don't know, there are those core skills that I was talking about when looking at statistics, looking at programming. Those are vital almost no matter which scientific discipline you're in. You can start taking coursework related to those. But again, what are your goals? Professionally, what do you want to be? Do you want to be an entrepreneur, a consultant that you drive your own car, you drive your own workload, you pursue the projects you want to? Or do you want to work for the government where it's more structured? Do you want to be a hydrologist and just work on water and you could do that for 30 years and then retire? Or do you kind of want to walk up the hierarchy or chain of command, start off as a hydrographer, but at the end of the day, what you really want to do is be, I don't know, head of USGS or be in the presidential cabinet, US cabinet. And then personal goals. Don't forget your personal and economic goals. Especially, start thinking about it now. Do you want to have a family? Where do you want to have a family? Where do you want to live? Are you willing to sacrifice moving around? A lot of opportunities, especially in science, you will need to relocate. So start thinking about that and thinking about, as I talk about later, who do you need to know? I'll kind of park right here for a second. Challenges that I've faced and that you'll potentially face somewhere along the line, no matter what race or ethnicity that you are. Racism is there. I'm not going to lie. From undergraduate studies at Mercer all the way to graduating from University of Maryland, racism popped up. No matter what region, whether I was in the South, whether I was in New York City, or where I'm at now, racism exists. You just have to figure out your best way of coping and dealing with it. Do you want to address it head on? Because oftentimes you may work in an environment or a climate where you don't really feel comfortable. You may be the only minority. Or if you're in the majority, you have to think about how are you treating whoever's in the minority that's on your team or colleagues. Classism. There's stereotypes about people, what is their economic background? Some people feel that affirmative action, really isn't fair. In some cases, people argue, well, I'm more qualified, I have all the credentials. I went through the same coursework, but just because of class or economic background, they'll think that they're more privileged. It exists. You may have economic challenges with this changing economy, especially with the pandemic. Um, those will be tough challenges. Again, you'll have to be fiscally or financially responsible, set goals for yourself, keep a budget for yourself. If you need help, again, it's about who you know. It may be your local faith-based institution. It may be your mentor, maybe your advisor. You know, don't be scared to go and ask for help or guidance, for especially when you're dealing with your economic backbone. Mental health, again, kind of going hand in hand. All of these things, self-confidence, you always kind of put yourself in check, especially in graduate school. Graduate school can be organized and straightforward, and you're finished in 4 years, no problem. Everything was, your advisor was perfect, everything was ironed out. Or it can be, as this illustration, it can be a rocky road with a bunch of mountains, and in this case, those are volcanoes. Things just, blow up sometimes. Um, So again, your mental health, take care of yourself, find counselor, have friends, just be able to talk about and express how you feel, and don't feel like you're alone, because there are other students going through the same thing that you're going through. And then finally, the unexpected events. Sometimes you can't prepare, again, for the pandemic. You can really prepare for that. Unemployment. Um, Sometimes there'll be bumpy roads. Like when I worked for the engineering firm, I discovered it's not like the government, where the money is always there and you have a constant permanent job that's, constant. There's always work to do. In the private world, once the project is over, if there are no other projects, the well is dried up. And if you're not necessarily in a senior position, you may be expendable. So unless you can find a niche or your recipe that um, that private entity or firm would want to keep you or transfer you to another department. So again, always try to expand your skill sets. Networking. Networking is vital. Who do you know? As people say, it's not about what you know, but who do you know? I say it's a combination, but who do you know goes a long way. Maximize, while you're in school, if it's like I say, your mentor, advisor, um, try to shadow, the advisor or professor that's closest to your interests. If, not necessarily there, if you don't want to be academia or a teacher, find someone. If it's an accountant, try to find an accountant that you can shadow. Start off with informational interviews. Informational interviews are typically interviews, just conversations. You're not asking for a job, unless they offer it to you, but you're not asking for a job. You're just finding out information. Oftentimes, people are fairly receptive to informational interviews if you want to know about what, as I said in this presentation, what is their story map? How did you get to where you are? A lot of people are very um, outgoing about that and willing to tell you their story. So again, networking, academic, professional, social, um, organization of Black students, Agape, Mercer Singers, all those were social groups that really helped um, my studies and professional development. These entities that I've listed at the bottom, the American Association of Geographers and National Association of Black Geoscientists, the William Anderson Fund, the fraternity, Phi Beta Sigma, that I'm a member of, and faith-based institutions. All these are examples of networks of people. So again, I strongly encourage, if you're interested in any of those, like geography or geosciences, the William Anderson Fund is about natural hazards and emergency management. go to their websites and find out more information. If you're not interested in any of these, whatever discipline you're in, there has to be multiple institutions um, that you can become a member of, uh, do presentations at, uh, do some type of outreach. But again, networking. So I guess I kind of get close to the end of looking at the career path. Key tips: make a plan. If you're undergraduate, you graduate, wherever you're at right now, I would say if you don't have a plan, start making a plan that has, benchmarks. I need to get to know so-and-so professor. I want an internship, by my junior year. Um, I need to take X, Y, and Z classes or seek out certification. Try to make a plan. Show your plan to someone. It can be your advisor, your mentor. It could be your classmates. Um, be persistent and pace yourself. That's key. If you're in graduate school, you have to pace yourself. That's why making a plan, especially when doing doctoral studies and doing a dissertation, if you think about the whole dissertation and defense at one time, you you'll eat yourself alive. You can't do that. You have to pace yourself. The the influence and the power of being able to have a plan and a checklist and checking those things off one at a time is amazing. Um, Makes you feel like you've accomplished something and you're chipping away at it. As well as if you have something that you and your advisor can look at simultaneously, that helps you. You're basically learning how to be a project manager. This fourth one, I would recommend to everyone: learn at least two languages, at least one foreign language and one programming language. That will put you ahead automatically. The foreign language, some debate, you have to figure out if your career path has you going internationally. Um, you want to consider which languages are used internationally. So if it's English, well, hopefully, again, you already know English, but French, Spanish, um, up and coming, it could be Chinese, types of Arabic, or if it's specialized, if you know for a fact that say you're majoring in health and you're going to a certain location to study a certain disease, if you're going to Brazil, you need to know Portuguese, but you may know you need to know a certain dialect. So again, learn at least two languages and then be interdisciplinary. That's what I mentioned, again, looking at business, policy, science. It's about being interdisciplinary. The concepts of being just a scientist, like I'm a geologist, it's starting to become one dimensional. You need to be interdisciplinary and be able to be a geologist as well as a statistician, as well as a public speaker. Being able to have all of those skill sets. Professionally, in order to get ahead, when you're, I would say, a sophomore, junior, try to get assistantships or internships. Those kind of propel you, especially helping your resume. If you want to be a professor, academia, research and teach. Be a teaching assistant, tutor, do as much as you can to prepare for whatever job that you want. Network, network, network. From whenever you start school, it doesn't stop. It doesn't end. There's always someone else you need to know or need to get to know. This publishing and presenting, again, is kind of more toward graduate school, especially, if you're getting a PhD and you're becoming kind of a scientist, a professional, a consultant. They're going to look at your resume or CV and say, what have you published? What articles have you written? The scientific articles that people have reviewed, criticized, you've edited, and it's gone through a peer review process. If you're going PhD, you will have to publish. And then presenting. I know presenting is becoming somewhat of an obstacle course because of the pandemic, but with Zoom and Google Meet and other entities, presenting is very important. Finally, health, family. Um, as you see, the illustration of a book was written by my wife. Cupcake and Noodles Go to Kenya. Basically, an account of our trip to Kenya. Cupcake and Noodles are nicknames of our daughters. We have a passion for traveling and, again, educating youth. So, again, spend time with your family, communicate, figure out your strategy with time management. And then finally, I'll kind of skip down and, give thanks and give back. Be thankful to the people that have helped you and guided you through the process, whether, teachers, professors, church members. Just always be thankful. Let them know how thankful you are and give back, whether through volunteer work or mentoring. Those things will help you in the long run. So what would I want you to remember from this presentation? When asking yourself, what is your story map? What do you want to be? What is your legacy that you want to tell or people to tell about you? What do you need to know? That's dealing with education. What science? What do I need to know? What is my recipe? If I could put everything, all my interests into one box, what would come out? What is the recipe? That helps you kind of go back 2 and 3, kind of alternate. If I want to do this, I need to know this. 4, what languages do you speak? So after you've gotten your education, or even while you're getting your education, you're saying, who do I want to speak to? Who am I going to be involved with? Who am I going to address? And then finally, who do I need to know? So I'll be pretty brief with this. So what exactly do I do as a regional navigation manager? Again, I work for NOAA, and basically using charts and maps, communication, working with the Coast Guard, the Army Corps of Engineers, city and state governments to help the navigation of goods and services. As far as responsibilities, my sector is just mainly the state of Texas, but all of us together as a team are responsible for mapping and charting of all these locations. This is an example of the different, again, who am I talking to? What languages do I need to know? It ranges from ships that are bringing cars, tennis shoes, oil, all types of supplies, huge tankers, all the way to the mom and pop families that are on the lake or, going up and down the river, going fishing. That's a huge group of people in different languages that you need to know and be able to convey. Each of them needs charts and maps so that to prevent them from getting into accidents or running ashore. But you have to teach them, what information is available and how to use it. Everyone can't afford a unit, a $1 million computer on a boat. Some are just using their cell phones. So that's what we as navigation managers do, helping out all these consortiums of people. One of the biggest challenges right now is they're going from paper maps on the left to everything being digital. That's kind of like saying to the Flintstones, you come live with the Jetsons, and you have to live in that type of society. So it's helping the people, again, the fishermen, the families who have always relied on these maps. Now the maps necessarily won't be available or distributed via paper. Everything will be geared toward electronics. So we have to help them with that conversion. Not really going to go into these. These are just all the different types of technology that we use. Everything from boats to unmanned boats. Unmanned boats being basically smaller boats that are remote control, kind of almost like aquatic drones, basically. that help look at how deep the water is, what's down there, if there's sunken ships, so that they can be either put on a map or help the people remove them. Ports, again, it's just another tool that provides all of this information real time. So obviously, if people are traveling, say right after a hurricane, they need to know what are the water levels, which way is the current going, what's the salinity, what's the weather. They need these things real time. So we're helping ports all around the U.S. put stations there so that can gather this information, that it'll be available real time, again, for navigation, safety, and transportation. This graphic, again, is interesting when it's talking about maps. As a geographer, data is always important. Data is almost never too old because it can be combined with newer data to create more accurate maps. So again, this is in coastal mapping. Sometimes you have different types of data and different maps, different layers that you have to converge to make a product that people can use. And then finally, navigation response. Like I say, I moved here after Harvey. They're always in need of help and good communication, as I said, between the Coast Guard and localities, and finding ships that sunk, wires that may be in the water, where water and soil has accumulated that you can't really see, that boats may crash into. So again, navigation response is a key discipline that we help out with as well. This is just a map of where my team members are located. I'm located again in the Houston, Galveston area, but these are some of the other locations of the response team. And then finally, it's customer civic engagement. I love engaging people, and as a scientist, you put yourself way ahead if you're able to engage customers and, as I said, speak different languages. So thank you very much.